Hello, folks, and welcome back to the program. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania with a live broadcast. An update on an op-ed piece that appeared in News24. We need to talk about this. Peter du Toit runs an opinion editorial article in News24 about retiring member of the African National Congress, the Minister for Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan. A slavishly devoted story to Pravin Gordhan. While I'm sure the gentleman has some positive qualities, they rarely make an appearance in South Africa's governance. Let's run through this story. It's listed as a political obituary. Gordhan resisted state capture in a toxic captured ANC by Peter du Toit. Now, that's the headline. This is my analysis. Pravin Gordhan, the 74-year-old anti-apartheid activist, current Minister of Public Enterprises, and past Minister of Finance and Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, is who we're talking about. From 1991 to 1994, he was chair of the Convention for Democratic South Africa, the CODESA Summit, and he was co-chairman of the Transitional Executive Council. As a member of parliament from 1994, from the outset of the new dispensation, until 1998, he chaired the parliamentary committee that focused on implementation of the new constitution and transformation of local government in post-apartheid. So let me make one thing very, very clear in this statement, folks. Pravin Gordhan is part and parcel of everything that South Africa is today. All of the failures, all of the murders, all of the racism, all of the racist legislation, all of the failed communist policies are the birth child of Pravin Gordhan, a man who was, just like Cyril Ramaphosa, part of the CODESA Summit. He was also the person who was responsible for setting up local governance, which has failed in South Africa, and I'll continue here. He served as commissioner in the South African Revenue Service from 1999 to 2009, while also serving as chairman of the World Customs Organization from 2000 to 2006. His first term as finance minister was between 2009 and 2014, and this period has come under a lot of criticism because this is when South Africa went sideways. Under his stewardship, government expenditure skyrocketed. The debt to GDP ratio, under control and shrinking from his predecessors, rose to over 40%, and today it's over like 100. He also oversaw overly generous pay rises for the public sector. Now, he came back as finance minister under Jacob Zuma only to be dumped for pointing out corruption, and this is what du Toit defends him on. When the South African rand tanked, he was brought back shortly afterwards. Now, the latest controversy about Pravin Gordhan is the South African Airways Takatso deal. He's accused of hiding details of the sale. That's his latest foible. And in fact, he has hid details, very opaque behavior. Now, this is what du Toit has to say in his op-ed, and I read this verbatim. Now, Gordhan, a trained pharmacist, should be remembered as one of the few who had the courage of their conviction to protect the state against attacks from Zuma, the Guptas, and their acolytes, and had the guts to stand up in a meeting of the ANC executive and challenge Zuma to his face. No one else, including and especially Ramaphosa, followed their conscience as steadfastly as Gordhan did, and he paid the price for it. Well, that's all true, but it doesn't excuse the misery the South Africans are in because of Pravin Gordhan. Sadly, Pravin Gordhan's conscience is all about commie ideals and state ownership of the means of production, dependency on the state, and promoting the ANC, a kleptocratic organization with a rapacious appetite. That is his legacy, not standing up to Zuma. Now, far from being lauded, he should be roundly condemned for failed policies that have crippled the private sector, resulted in stagnant or non-existent GDP growth, expanding the welfare state, and his opaque governance. The latest issue being, of course, the secret sale of South African Airways, SAA, to Takatso for just a song. And then recent meetings in which he kept the press out of there so that people would know about the dirty dealings taking place behind the curtain. Now, du Toit claims that Gordhan has long been a victim of racially charged insults or dog whistles, perhaps, but most of us never see that. All we see is a failed communist being lauded for standing up once in 30 years of pervasive corruption. Once in 30 years. Du Toit mentions Gordhan as one of two ANC ministers who happen to be Indian. Now, the other is being the even more clueless Ibrahim Patel, who has virtually no understanding of macroeconomics, yet is, shockingly, the Minister of Trade. Gordhan and Patel should come in for criticism and critique, not for their ethnicity, but for their idiotic ideas and failure, and that is what this program has done all along. I've criticized Pravin Gordhan repeatedly over the years, not because he's Indian. Don't give a flying flip that he's Indian. What I do care about is he's a communist, and he doesn't believe in free markets. And his policies have made South Africans poor and destroyed. South Africa, under the National Party, was the largest economy in Africa by a wide measure. Today, their economy is less than half the size of Nigeria's. Talk about a comeuppance. South Africa was a leading producer of nuclear reactors, one of the best countries in the world. And now they can't even keep Coburg open. South Africa produced all of its electricity and then exported much of its electricity through the Southern African Power Pool under the National Party. Under the ANC, they can't keep the lights on and are setting records with less electricity than available electricity throughout the day. South Africa had a handful of murders. The apartheid regime can be blamed for approximately 1,300 to 2,500 extrajudicial murders during their reign, yet the ANC has seen over 800,000 South Africans murdered during its watch. Farm invasions have started once again in the Free State, and the government sits by idly allowing people to drive, people with cars, people with resources, claiming land that isn't theirs. Racists running around saying, we've taken our land back. You haven't taken your land back. You're thieves, and you should be addressed. Pravin Gordhan, silent. The destruction of the state-owned enterprises, which isn't entirely Pravin Gordhan's fault, but he certainly didn't improve things. The ANC's idiotic decision to divide Eskom into 3 separate units to create 3 separate patronage boards and 3 separate administrative infrastructures to stuff with your loyal cadres or caters. Pravin Gordhan, far from being lauded and praised for standing up to Jacob Zuma, should be openly criticized for being a communist and destroying the wealth of South Africans. That's the bottom line here, folks. That is the reality. That is the reality. Pravin Gordhan, just another failed ANC minister who's been in government virtually every day since 1994. And what does South Africa have to show for it? 7.8 million South Africans are HIV positive. Tuberculosis, almost 1 million South Africans with tuberculosis. GDP growth of less than 2% when the country needs 8% to grow and bring prosperity to everyone. Racial policies all over the place. It's unbelievable, folks. It's unbelievable. Crazy stuff. All right, thanks for tuning in. You'll be redirected to the next program here in just a moment, and that is a live broadcast of the news for today. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Be sure to leave the comments behind. If you're not a subscriber, please become one and listen in for cogent, objective, honest, and thoughtful analysis from a voice outside South Africa that knows South Africa. Thanks a lot, folks. Take care of yourselves. We'll catch you here next time in a few minutes for the news. Thank you very much. Cheers.